Welcome to the Court of History. I am Sidney Blumenthal. The court is now in session. I am here with my colleague, Sean Malenza of Princeton University. Um, and Sean is an incredibly erudite scholar, as many of you know. Um, but I wonder, Sean, if you've read the stories of Arthur Conan Doyle on Sherlock Holmes.
Well, I've read a number of them. Yeah, go ahead. Where are you
Yeah,
going
I
with
read
this?
many of them when, particularly one summer I was at a summer camp. And one of them is called The Adventure of Silver Blaze. Silver
Now,
Blaze.
that's one I've not read, so you're going to have to fill me in.
Yeah, it's about a racehorse.
Hmm.
And the Scotland Yard detective comes and he says to Sherlock Holmes, "Is there any point to which you wish to draw to my attention?" And Holmes says, "To the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime." And the detective says, "The dog did nothing in the nighttime." And Holmes says, "That was the curious incident."
Right, right. The
So
dog that didn't bark.
the dog that didn't bark, well,
Right.
as it happens, we're dealing with a case of the dog that didn't bark, and that is referenced by none other than Jeffrey Epstein in an email that was revealed yesterday, an email that he sent to Ghislaine Maxwell. And uh, he says on April 2nd, 2011, to Ghislaine Maxwell, "I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump." And then uh, the name of a victim is redacted. It's assumed it might be Virginia Giuffre. And it says, "Victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." And Maxwell replies in an email, "I've been thinking about that." So we're dealing with a context here where the government shutdown is ended. Some people call it the Epstein shutdown because House Speaker Mike Johnson refused to swear in Representative Adelita Grijalva of Arizona because she would be the 218th and final vote on the discharge petition to force the House to vote on a measure requiring the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files. Um, and the Democrats, as soon as the shutdown ended, released three emails. And one of them was about the dog that did not bark in the night. What's your what's your
Well,
general
it's one of those. I mean, how many ways can you fill in the empty spaces in those emails? I mean, what possibly could they be referring to? It's all very damning. I mean, the fact that Trump spent hours with this victim. I mean, okay, what were they doing? Were they playing checkers? I doubt it. It takes a certain degree of supposition, but not a lot. That this just closes in on the president much more with each passing time. And it was interesting that it took them this long to get the emails out, but that's another issue. They're there, and we have to consider them.
Yeah, these are from the Epstein estate and not the Epstein files that the government holds. The government holds hundreds of thousands of documents right now. Two of the emails are between the journalist Michael Wolff and Jeffrey Epstein. They're really interesting emails. And rather than you and I discuss them, why don't we talk to Michael Wolff about them? He is the author and journalist. He's received two National Magazine Awards. He's the biographer of Donald Trump, Rupert Murdoch. He's written many insightful books. Lately, All or Nothing on the 2024 presidential campaign. He's the host of the Inside Trump's Head podcast. Welcome, Michael.
Sydney, nice to see you.
Yeah,
So,
always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Great to see you.
Let's before we discuss the dog that doesn't bark email. Let's talk about your emails first.
my world famous emails.
Yeah, they certainly are the subject of much sensation. So In one of them, in January 2019, Jeffrey Epstein writes you and he says about Trump, of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. So what did he know about the girls, and um, why did he does he want Ghislaine to stop, and stop what exactly?
You know, I can't remember what the Ghislaine reference there is. Um, Although I just got it. Sitting here, I just got it. Okay, so at that point, Ghislaine is pursuing a lawsuit, um, stupidly, actually, pursuing a lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre. Um, and that is, and I'm literally just at this moment do I remember that. And that has not worked out well for Ghislaine, because I think, as I recall, Virginia Giuffre countersued, and there's lots of depositions, and Ghislaine will have to testify, and that will mean that she will have to testify about all of this, including about quite possibly about Trump. So that's what that's about. Um, as for him knowing about the girls, that's a direct reference to what Trump knew about what was going on at Jeffrey Epstein's house. And it goes back to a couple of things. I mean, I've talked here before about the photographs that I've seen, um, of Trump and at around Epstein's pool with a set of the girls who were often at Epstein's house. But then there was also Epstein's view that it was Trump who first alerted the police to what was going on, the Palm Beach police, to what was going on at Epstein's house. So this was always a thing, and this was a thing that I prodded Epstein on, because I thought it was a smoking gun. Um, did he know what was going on at Epstein's house? If so, um, why did he keep quiet about it? And if he knew, what was the nature of how he knew, et cetera, et cetera. And throughout my discussions with Epstein about Trump, it was always, you have the goods here. You have the power uh, to cause Trump an enormous amount of trouble, and possibly to bring him down. Actually, jumping 6 years later, that may in fact be what is happening now,
Yeah. So
from from
let's go to
from the
the next.
grave, as it were.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said, but let's go to the next email first. This is this email is from December 2015, and Trump has announced he's running for president in 2016. And you explained to Jeffrey Epstein that CNN is likely to ask Trump about his relationship with him. And Epstein asks you what you thought Trump would answer. And you reply, and I'm going to quote you, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, you can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it looks like you could win, you could save him generating a debt. Now, let me comment first and then let you comment. This advice turns out to be remarkably prescient and deeply ironic. It turns out that Trump did lie. You assumed he would lie, and Epstein assumed he would lie. And when he was eventually asked about his relationship with Epstein, and of course, it's ironic because Epstein, as we know, hanged himself, and Trump is hanging himself by lying, as you suggested. So what is your thought now on that email?
Well, I think the context was, and again, as I said before, I was trying, and that was at a moment when you could still look at the Trump candidacy and not take it very seriously. But there were reasons to begin to take it more seriously. And I, among many people, was increasingly alarmed about this and and understood that the one person who had the potential to damage this candidacy was Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not the only person who understood that. I think I've said before here that when I was with Steve Bannon when he met Jeffrey Epstein in 2017, and the first thing that Bannon said to Epstein was, "You were the only person I was afraid of during the campaign." So I, he had this. Trump's candidacy is continuing on. It's unlikely that he would get to the end, but it's unlikely that he would have gotten as far as it had gotten by this point. I was trying to encourage Epstein to use what information he had to get Trump. And in this instance, that would have been an interesting way to approach this. Let let Trump publicly tell a lie, then expose the lie. Now, Epstein, and this is because he would go back and forth, and I think he would entertain this possibility that he could do this, but at the same time, Epstein was, without a doubt, very much afraid of Donald Trump.
Mm.
So, in the end, I never got well. I mean, we can get to that. In the end, I think that he was starting to get to this point that he might publicly talk about this relationship, but then he was arrested and died.
Yeah, you raised the question of Epstein's fear of Trump, and yet Epstein himself had leverage over Trump by his own knowledge. So where are this is two scorpions in a bottle, as it were.
You would think, and that's what I always thought. But he always was, and this is a marked impression that I had of his fear of Donald Trump. That Donald Trump was a man capable of doing anything, who would do anything,
Mhm.
and this was actually Epstein. Epstein believed Donald Trump should not be president, not just because he knew nothing about governing, but because he was pernicious in so many ways. Or as Epstein said once, and it kind of gave you a shiver because this is coming from Epstein. But he said Trump has no scruples.
He said
Um,
that to you?
yes,
Yes.
so this is coming from a man who is now the poster child for having no
Mhm.
scruples.
Yeah,
Do you
But
scrupulous.
remember the context in which he told you that?
what in we had long discussions about Donald Trump. So, I mean, at this point, I am already, I have, I'm in the middle of probably writing my first book about
Mhm.
about Trump, and using Epstein frequently as a source. And to this day, there are few people who I think are as insightful about Trump as Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. Let me
Mhm.
read to you another email that came out yesterday. And this is an email that Jeffrey Epstein writes to himself on February 1st, 2019. Quote, Trump knew of it and came to my house many times during that period. And then he adds, he never got a massage. So he knew of it and he never got a massage. And yet Epstein knew a lot about Trump's relationships with women and his sexual assaults. And he had spent many years with him involved with women that did not involve a massage. But uh, you know, what is he
What is
thinking?
he saying there? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, other than the fact that he knew of it, and I assume that's he knew what was going on at um, at Epstein's house. And he was fully for. I mean, he knew about Epstein's sexual tastes. He knew about about the constant ingoings of young women, young girls at Epstein's house. He understood he understood the interests of his close friend Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. Now there's another email that came out as well. It's in 2015, and it's to the then New York Times financial reporter Landon Thomas Jr., who is asking about stories, and Epstein writes him, "Have them ask my houseman about Donald almost walking through the door, leaving his nose print on the glass. As young women were swimming in the pool, and he was so focused he walked straight into the door." And another email he writes, "There are photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen." Um, and he urges Thomas, "I am serious man for the good of the nation. Why not try to get some of this out there?" Now, the New York Times and Thomas never get that story. And there's a story that's published in May of 2016 called "Crossing the Line: How Donald Trump Behaved with Women in Private" in the New York Times. Long story. And there's no mention of Jeffrey Epstein in the story or of his relationship. And then after the Access Hollywood tape incident, where Trump says, when you're a star, they let you do it, you can do anything, grab him by the pussy, his relationship with Epstein goes unmentioned. And it's not brought up until years later. So I want to note that there was, so the media really um, was the dog, another dog that didn't bark here.
Yeah, no, and it's a curious thing. I mean, this is a story that has now been um, uh, this has been 6 years on this story. Obviously, I before the election, I released tapes of Epstein talking about his relationship with Trump, thinking that would land with explosively in the days before the election. It did not, and I've always been confused and about why there would be resistance to this story. And let me say another interesting thing is this story kind of cleaves down the middle. It has been um, a viral story online, in social media, and it has been at best a very muted story in traditional media. Why that should be the case, I assume partly it's because there's a general establishment distaste for Epstein, um, and then on top of that, of course, a fear of Donald Trump, especially in this second administration, when he has so consistently been willing to sue media organizations and to damage them and their parent companies in ways that are frightening and threatening.
Yeah. Let me ask you about another email. This is August 23rd, 2018, and Epstein writes Kathy Rumler, who is the former White House counsel for President Obama. And Epstein writes, "I know how dirty Donald is. My guess is that non-lawyers, New York biz people, have no idea what it means to have your fixer flip. And he's clearly referring to Michael Cohen. Yeah. And, but he's maybe referring to other incidents as well when he says he knows how dirty Donald is. And, uh,
Well,
and
I think that
what do you think?
that's true. I mean, I think he knows him to be a, a sexually a dirty dog. And he knows with some detail and some intimacy about Donald Trump's financial affairs, and this is in both in tax matters and the way Trump has raised money, and the way he has financed both the casinos, other pieces of real estate, Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, and I mean, I think that that Trump often sought advice from Epstein in these matters, and they were, I think, pretty intimately involved with each other's financial affairs.
Yeah. And did he, that's a matter that is also stymied in this investigation in the Senate Finance Committee. Senator Wyden is pursuing this, among others, and there's a lot of stonewalling going on about that. Did Jeffrey Epstein ever discuss his financial relationship with Donald Trump?
I mean, I have to. He spent a lot of time specifically talking about Trump's taxes and the help he had given him in the, I would say that that's probably the first half of the 1990s, when Trump had gone through several bankruptcies, had borrowed, I think about $1 billion from various banks, and had personally guaranteed it. And then that money, those loans had been forgiven, um, which of course makes that a taxable event. Um, and that's a kind of difficult moment. You can't pay back the $1 billion that you owe, but now you have to pay the government $500 million. And so there was a lot of talk and a lot of details about Epstein's advice to Trump on how to get out of that.
What was his view? You've mentioned it before of Trump's financial acumen.
I, well, he thought he had no. I mean, Trump. He always said with incredulity that Trump could not read a balance sheet, and Trump was fundamentally innumerate. You couldn't give him a number. Any number that you supplied Trump then would be bent out of shape, and by a factor sometimes of 10 or 100, or you just couldn't have a numbers discussion with Trump.
Yeah. Epstein and Trump had a lot of history together, including with women and a lot with models. Um, there's the notorious incident of the American Beauty Calendar Girls event at Mar-a-Lago in 1992, where there are only two guests, Epstein and Trump, and one of the models says it was disgusting, and there's a description of Trump um, getting into the bed of one of the models while she's sleeping, and she is very upset. And there's an account of a lawsuit by the promoter, Jill Harth Horaney, who says that he sexually assaulted her. Um, so I assume Epstein knew a lot about the history of Trump's sexual assaults, which are, you know, numerous. Uh,
Numerous, and he knew, if not all of them. I mean, I mean, maybe he did know. He and Trump were, number one, often, if not always, together, and they were, to say the least, free in their discussions about this. This was all sport for them.
Right, right. Right.
Mhm.
And I can imagine boasting and so forth. You know what I did last night? That kind of thing. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
Yeah.
absolutely. And there was no, and I've heard, I know how Epstein himself talks about this, and it
How
is
does he
not,
talk about
it
it?
is not like you and I. Well, I don't know either of you all that well, but my assumption is that none of us talk like that. It was a way in which there was, the discussion was that there were no rules. Rules did not apply. That this was all, at some level, profoundly humorous
this is
entertainment,
it goes straight to the
sport.
Access Hollywood take, right?
Yes,
I mean,
sport.
it's
Just
the
think
same
of it
thing,
as
right?
as as
Yeah,
as sport. The
yeah, they let
world
you
the
do it. When
world
you're a
is
star.
filled with women who are accessible to us because we are rich and powerful, and the women, we like it and the women like it, and it's all, and let's all have a yuck.
Right.
Yeah. They went to a lot of Victoria's Secret events together. Of course, the owner of Victoria's Secret, Les Wexner, was a financial angel of Jeffrey Epstein. There were a lot of models there. And there was a third man named Jean-Luc Brunel, was a famous manager of models, ran a Paris agency, and Epstein partnered with him in creating a model agency based in Miami called MC2. That was
Yeah,
uh,
and there were a whole set of interlocking model agencies, ID models, and then there was Trump models.
The Model T. Yeah.
This is, I mean, this was, as we've discussed before, their fundamental interest. This was a kind of currency. It was a currency of
Mm.
status. It was a currency of social climbing. Um, and and maybe it was the currency of what model agencies made. I have no idea about their finances.
yeah. Did in your conversations with Jeffrey Epstein, did he discuss Jean-Luc Brunel, who himself, after Epstein's death, also was found hanged in a cell in
Yeah,
Paris? He was arrested for rape and human trafficking by the
he
French
he
police.
he didn't, or if he did, it was tangential, and I don't remember. I mean, I think Epstein was fairly compartmentalized in what he wanted to say. I think by that point, and this was, I was spending time with him after he got out of jail. I think he was trying to do an amount of whitewashing of his associations, and I think the modeling phase was something that was, I think he understood that was at this point in time, and this was after 2014, problematic.
Yeah,
Mm.
there's a famous photograph of Trump, Epstein, and Brunel together. So they certainly all had relationships, and there are photographs of Brunel with Ghislaine as well. They're yucking it up. Back to Ghislaine and her response, in which she says that basically she's thinking about it. I've been thinking about that to Epstein about the dog that didn't bark
Mhm.
is Trump. Um, she testified when Todd Blanche, the deputy attorney general, came to see her in the Tallahassee prison, and then before her transfer to Club Fed in Texas, that Trump was a perfect gentleman. But she's in this email thinking about the dog that didn't bark. She knows a lot.
Yeah, no, and I think it's an interesting aspect of this. I don't see now. I've said those. I've prefaced many things about Trump with those words. I don't see how he can do the following and then he does it, but I don't see how he can pardon Ghislaine now. That would seem a monumental bridge too far. but then that also puts him in the difficult position that if he has, as I believe, made a deal with Ghislaine, and if he breaks that deal, and I think Ghislaine and her family are in the position to leak a lot of stuff, um, and point their finger in a lot of rich directions. That's a problem for him. So I think on both sides, this is a problem. Can't
Yeah,
pardon her, can't not
Yeah,
pardon her.
exactly. I might take
and
that risk.
they certainly can't prosecute her for perjury in that,
No,
um, in
no,
that deposition. Can't
No,
which they
because I'm
clearly did.
I'm sure they can't because I'm sure they wrote the script for her.
right, right,
Yeah.
right, right.
So, um, what you wrote to Jeffrey, in one of the emails about Trump lying has proven to be a constant truth. Um, uh, Trump, as far as I can find, made his first statement about his relationship with Epstein after his suicide and replied about him, I had no idea. That's the quote.
Mhm.
And he's denied it ever since.
Right, and that of course there's a quote, and I believe it's about 2003,
Yeah,
two,
yeah.
three, four,
He
somewhere
really
in
is a
there
yeah, yeah,
where he spells out exactly the idea he had, and with some jocularity.
right.
Yeah. Yesterday, after the emails came out, including yours with Epstein, he tweeted, and I'm quoting, the Democrats are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again because they'll do anything at all to deflect on how badly they've done on the shutdown and so many other subjects. Only a very bad or stupid Republican would fall into that trap. So he continues his cover up of his relationship.
Right, and remember, Trump, a man of simple language, hoax is always a giveaway that it is, you
And it's
know,
not a hoax.
yes, exactly.
Right. There's a
Right.
misleading Washington Post headline that I don't want to escape, that appears this morning. It said Epstein wrote that Trump knew of sexual abuse but didn't participate. They're talking ice about the the
He didn't
massage.
get the massage. He didn't get the
Yeah,
massage.
but
That means he did
Trump
nothing.
certainly participated
Well, the
in a
Washington
lot of
Post, yeah, and the
sexual
Washington,
abuse.
this is that one of those interesting things that we know and can now chart. The Washington Post is will go out of its way to bend over backwards to give a tip of the hat to
Right.
Donald Trump. That this is a Jeff Bezos thing. This is transparent.
Hmm.
I mean, and also again, part of that traditional media. I mean, I thought the New York Times's of coverage of this, including its coverage of me, um, was was very skeptical about all of this,
Hmm.
not taking this not taking this very seriously in any way.
Hmm. Yeah, it's as
Yeah.
if it's just too
Um,
icky. It's just too low, just too loose. They don't want to go near it. It's like it's as if by touching the story that they are degraded by it, and
Exactly.
and it's
No,
not
I
good
remember.
journalism.
Yeah, no, I remember when I did an interview with David Remnick, the editor of the New Yorkers, a couple of months ago, and he could barely touch it. Why should we be interested in this? Why should we lower ourselves to
Hmm.
this to the muck of this story?
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a very important story, and it. You said you have said we're close to the smoking gun now. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, here is Epstein directly talking about the relationship of to what Donald Trump knows when he would have known it, um, and which pretty clearly comes to the almost to the moment of implicating Donald Trump in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes.
Yeah, you are suing Melania Trump.
I am, and that comes, this is part of the cover up, that Melania Trump has gone around and threatened anybody who discusses her involvement and her husband's involvement with Donald Trump. So she threatened me, but um, I've sued her before she could sue me, or instead of her suing me. So we will play that out, and it is another avenue toward figuring out actually what happened here. What were the nature of these relationships,
Yeah,
Epstein and the Trumps?
there's a lot of interest in your suit. I noted that in one day you got $500,000 in contributions through GoFundMe.
Yeah, no, I think we're up to, well over $700,000 now. Yeah, no, it's been an enormous outpouring. People want to know. I mean, this is, if not the story of our time, certainly a central story of our time. And it may be the story. I mean, it still may be, after all of these things that Trump has managed um, to get out of, get away with. There is, the Epstein thing that he cannot shake, that keeps coming, drip, 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 drip.
You have written many books about Donald Trump. And what does this reveal about him and his character and the fact that he's covering this up?
I think Donald Trump is a scumbag. I mean, I think that in layman's terms, and I think in some way everyone recognizes that, or once recognized it. I mean, he was a famous scumbag, proud of his scumbagness. And somehow, because of his particular showman and media gifts, because of the short attention spans of everyone in our age, because of the nature of political polarization, he has been able to sidestep um, the this the identity of a scumbag that we would in times past never have elected president of the United States. I mean, maybe that's changed too, and now we're pleased to have scumbags as president. But I do think that at the bottom, history demands, let's acknowledge this guy has lived a life that otherwise would have disqualified him, to say the very least, from being president of the United States.
One of the emails that was released has Epstein calling Trump borderline insane. Did he ever say anything similar to you about Trump?
Yeah, yeah, all the time. And that was certainly, I mean, he considered him a sociopath, or sometimes a psychopath. That he believed he would do anything to anyone that was necessary, that he got pleasure out of doing anything to anyone. So he thought he was a sadist too. Um, yeah, I mean, Epstein's estimation of his friend Trump's character could not have been lower, and to listen to it could not have been more alarming.
Yeah. Sean, I wonder what you think about the historical significance. Michael mentioned history of this entire episode and the relationship of um, Trump and Epstein. There have been many scandals in the past and cover ups. And how important is this in um, in crystallizing our understanding of um, of Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, look, you want to compare this to Warren G. Harding's affairs? Do you even want to compare this to, John F. Kennedy, released much later, about his sexual goings on? This is different. This is not like that. This is not, or even Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky. This is nothing on that order. This is about a whole world. You understand? It goes back to the 1980s, the 1990s. It goes, so even go back to the 70s in the Studio 54 world. This is the production. This is the whole background of this guy. This is not a guy who likes to, have affairs. This is not a guy who's sneaking people into the White House. This is a guy who comes out of an entire culture, an entire world, which is based upon this kind of degradation, this kind of sexual degradation, because that's what it's about. It's not about sex. It's about degradation fundamentally. It seems to me. This is on a scale. It's not even a matter of scale. It's in a different universe as far as the sexual scandals around the presidency are concerned. So I think we have to take it that seriously. I mean, as Michael was saying, these are things that would have disqualified anybody from becoming president. But it's more serious than that because it indicts our entire culture, our entire world, the entire politics we are living in right now. It's not that he is worse or better or what have you than others. No, it's that we have put into power a culture, a world, a class, if you will, of people for whom as Michael said, it's sadistic, it is degraded, and it runs the country. And indeed, I think it runs the world right now, or it's on the brink of running the world, because I think you see these kinds of characters elsewhere. This is not simply an American phenomenon. So this is why it's so alarming to me, is that it goes well beyond. It's as if we had this monstrous world that existed that we managed to keep contained, and that has nothing to do with, Warren Harding or JFK. No, this is different, and it's always been there. And it is actually, I don't usually use these terms. It is evil. It's an evil world, and it's always been there. But now it's controlling the world, or it's on the brink of controlling the world. And that's the way I see this whole Epstein thing. It's not just a scandal. It is a scandal, to be sure, but it's indicative of something that's much larger than that, which is that a kind of literally a social evil. You talk about pathology or sociopathology, whatever. This is different than that. That has always been there, and that is now coming out. And by the way, it also attracts there are sort of political equivalents to this. There's a kind of Nick Fuentes side to all of this. It all kind of conjoins in a way because it is based on a kind of degradation of humanity. That is what this is about to me, and historically, and it's why it is so alarming. I mean, I like to listen to all of the details. I want to hear all about the emails and stuff, but to me, it's stepping back from it all. It's of world historic. What should we say? I mean, it's maybe you could go back to classical times and see something like this, the complete collapse of a civilization. That is what I think we're on the brink of, and it's not just frightening. It's beyond that. It almost brings me to tears, actually, to think about it too long, because of these people are that way.
Mm.
I don't know if that answers your question, Sidney.
Well, it answers mine, Sean. I think that's just. I mean, I have nothing to add to that. That is just that's well said. That's exactly where we are, and we should all be on the verge of tears.
Yeah, Michael, I assume that these emails between you and Jeffrey Epstein that were released um, are not the last communications that you had with him on emails.
Um, I haven't. Um, Kind of strangely, I've not gone through my emails looking for what's there. Um, but they're certainly not the last communication because I have so much communication real time on tape. And it's again a kind of confounding to me that I released some of this before the election. Actually, I would say with Epstein saying significantly more damning stuff about Trump than he says in these emails. And again, that got at best muted attention. So the nature of what turns this into a story, a scandal, in which the gun then becomes pointed in some direction, and perhaps at the president. Um, I don't know what that chemistry is. Is it just drip, 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 and people can't avoid what's now in front of their faces. Is it 26,000 emails? I think that's the number. So it's just the preponderance of evidence at this point. I I don't know, but the truth of this has been hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. When you first came on some months ago to talk about this with us, it helped set in motion this entire train of events. And you had mentioned, as you mentioned here, the photographs that you saw that Jeffrey Epstein showed you of Trump with scantily clad, very young women pointing to a stain at the crotch of his pants. And this was shown in a House hearing in to Kash Patel by Congressman Ted Lieu and raised by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse to Attorney General Pam Bondi. This particular incident that you raised, and they asked, "Where are the photographs?" Now, they are not in the Epstein estate, they are with the federal government now in the Epstein files that Donald Trump is fighting to prevent from being released. And we know from credible reports in Bloomberg and other news organizations that 1,000 FBI agents have been instructed to redact Trump's name from um, the Epstein files. So we don't know what will happen to those photographs, but um, should we assume that they are physical evidence? And
Well, we don't know. All I can say is that I have seen them on more than one occasion, and I know that Epstein kept them in his safe, which was raided by the FBI. Now, were they in the safe? It would have been likely that they would have been in the safe at the time when the FBI raided it, but I can't say for sure. And who knows what has happened, what the nature of the chain of evidence between now and between then and now is. So, but so all I can say is that I have seen those photographs and
But this
described
raises
them in some detail.
this raises a question in my mind, though, about the whole story, which perplexes me because, and it's historical in a way. I mean, Donald Trump is famous for having said that Nixon should have burned the tapes. That was he was really a loser and a sucker because he didn't burn the tapes, right? So I would assume, under these circumstances, that what Sidney was saying before it was in Bloomberg, that damaging evidence, any damaging evidence that would be in these files would have been long since removed, long since
And
redacted,
yes, and
and so
it may well have been. I mean, let's understand that Donald Trump controls this Justice Department.
right, right.
There is no independent life of this Justice Department.
But this is the
Um,
question, though: is why then is he resisting so hard having these things released? I mean, if there's nothing left in there, why not release them and say, "Look, we're clean"?
Good. I mean, I can't answer
Yeah,
that
no, I know it's an unanswerable question. I don't know.
that question. I know. There was certainly has always been reason to believe that Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in July 2019. Um, uh, on the, if not the orders, on the, what shall we say, its suggestion, inclination of Donald Trump, because he had increasingly started to talk about his relationship with Trump, not least of all in a book that I published, literally just like a few weeks before his arrest. And he was in Paris then, and as soon as he arrived back
you were in
in
touch with Epstein during that period.
yes, no, I was, and he had um, my book Siege, which was the second book I wrote about the first Trump White House, and in that book, Epstein, for the first time, and this was with Epstein's approval, he was essentially on the record here, gave me the story of their breakup in 2004 and Epstein's belief that it was Trump who knew about what was going on at Epstein's house, who went to the Palm Beach police. So I wrote that's in that book. And as soon as Epstein read it, and I had not given this to him to read before, and he read it in book form in Paris, and he said, I think he called me and he said, I think I went too far.
Hmm.
And
What does that mean?
Well, I think he went, he shouldn't have said what he said because I mean, I'm interpreting here that this invited notice and possible retribution from Donald Trump.
What was his motive? What did Epstein think was Trump's motive in acting as a rat, a stool pigeon, to
Yes, no, well, that was because, so that happened, they had this real estate dispute. Epstein bid $36 million for a house, took his friend Trump to advise him on moving the swimming pool. Trump immediately went behind his back and bid $41 million for the house. Epstein lost thereby lost the auction. Epstein, understanding Trump's finances, knew that he did not have $41 million. Therefore, the $41 million he must be fronting for someone else. In other words, a money laundering scheme. Epstein threatened Trump with revealing this, going to the press, suing him about this. At which point, in actuality, the Palm Beach police began to investigate Epstein, and Epstein believed that was at Trump's that Trump had gone to the police in order as revenge or as in an effort to block Epstein's move against him.
You dropped a dime.
Yeah, you've explained to us before that the person who Epstein believed had fronted the money was the person who, in the end, bought the property at an exorbitant price, a Russian oligarch close to Putin named
Rybolev, I think, but you
Yeah.
may have a better pronunciation
Maybe I have
of the oligarchs than me. Yes,
but that's what Epstein believed.
yes. And the house was, so the $41 million house
Yeah.
was sold within less than 2 years for $95 million. So that would be an indication that probably something was amiss.
Well, there's much more that will unfold over time, and we will look forward to speaking to you, Michael. We assume that some of the dogs that haven't barked may bark, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. But
I feel like we're in a kennel of silent dogs.
We are all, yes. So, but we want to thank you very much, and for your participation now in this episode. And the Court of History, on behalf of Sean Mullens and myself, is now adjourned.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.